Hey guys, KenSmithFishing.com. This will be episode 3 of the Albert Collins, Glen Freeman structure fishing videos on Sam Rayburn. Gotten some great feedback and some questions I thought we would address before we jump off into today's videos. Brett asked, well, first off, Brett asked where we were, and I'll tell you where we were. So we started on the caney end on the back side of the forest, and what you're going to see as the day progresses, you can't tell what we're doing, but we're actually working our way up the back side of the canyons, and we finish into canyons, excuse me, the back side of the Black Forest, and we finish our day pretty close to the mouth of mud. Not all the way down there, but pretty close. So we just kind of worked down. There's a series of ridges through there, and we were hitting those ridges and where those drains ran in and out. You don't see all the graphing we do. What you will notice, and I pointed out in a later video, on the last video, or I think actually on this video as well, you'll see Albert runs just a basic zigzag pattern, deep to shallow, and he goes up those contour lines. You're going to see that in every one of those videos. It's obviously just the way he does it and what he finds effective to find that, to look at that stuff. He also asked what rod Albert was cranking with. Albert said he cranks with a Helium 3 710 moderate, heavy moderate. You're going to hear that a lot. These guys are just like you did in the video with Ricky Guy and Dickie Newberry on my trap series the earlier this year. Guys like throwing those heavier rods to put a hook in a fish. We got bigger, heavier hooks now on most of our baits. They want a lot of rod to stick those fish. They're not throwing the old whippy fiberglass rods that we used to throw. I asked him about scents, and he said, I do use scents. He says he uses Kick and Bass, which I think is a Texas-made product. Matter of fact, I think Ron, maybe on the Texas Fishing Forum, owns that company. I'm not sure about that though. Anyway, I've seen Ron's got it on his boat. He says, but I really only use it when the fish are picking it up and dropping my bait a lot. He said he doesn't just use it all the time, but when it's a finicky kind of a bite where the fish don't seem to hang on to it, he'll use it. And I have seen that demonstrated personally to a very high degree on nest fish, where they would pick something up and blow it back out, put scent on it, and boom, they'll eat it and move off with it. So then I asked the same, and I also asked Albert, does he use a bobber stopper? Because remember, he says he doesn't peg his sinker. And I wanted to know how it doesn't mess up that worm as it comes down. And by the way, this was not set up to be a Mr. Twister commercial. It's just the bait both these guys believe in. So I'm not sponsored by Mr. Twister, you know, so the guys are going to talk throughout about products they believe in. Neither one of these guys is big cash sponsors. You know, they're not touring guys, so they're talking about products that they believe in, that they actually fish with. Same question to Glen Freeman, what rod? And he said, I use a Custom Light Series Lose rod. It's a 7'11". It's a heavy-ish action rod. He said, but what's really important is that reel. Now you'll hear us talk about this about the fatigue factor. He says he uses a BB1Z in a 5:1-to-1 gear ratio. Now I know Keith Combs talks about cranking with a really high-speed reel. If you've tried to do both, it is a lot easier on your hands, your wrists, your forearms to crank with that lower speed reel. I honestly don't know how he does it. He being Keith, but both these guys in the video and then in comments afterwards talked about they use low speed reels for their deep cranking. Glenn says he never uses scent. He doesn't see that it makes a difference, so he doesn't use it. And he does not use a bobber stopper. Albert, oh sorry, I think I jumped there. Albert also does not use a bobber stopper. They just use what I call a traditional J-bend hook. So you got your eye, and then it comes down and it bends off of it. And that worm coming down and hitting it then doesn't push that, the sinker coming down and hitting the worm doesn't push it down off the hook. So no pegging, no bobber stoppers. I think that's really interesting. The other question I got from 4 different guys now is hard spots. What are you talking about? So we talked about this a lot during the day, kind of what we fish and what we see on Rayburn. So hard spots are really just one of a couple of things. So there is some naturally occurring rock in Rayburn. It's usually around old creek bends, where creek bends have washed out the sand and the clay to the rock. So you'll see some, but I mean, if you just run around on Rayburn, you'll see some occasional little rocky banks. That's hard spot number one. Hard spot number two is concrete. Remember, there were little towns and roads all over where Rayburn is now. There's a giant old bridge in Caney. You can go in there and side scan it. It's on your map. You can find it's not far off of the Church Steps Island out there. So that's also hard spots. But most of what, and shell beds, by the way. So, and those are, if you can find one of those are a big deal. But most of what we're talking about is red clay. So the bottom of Rayburn is all of East Texas is basically sitting on clay. Now there's topsoil, sand, and in Rayburn, silt on top of that red clay. It's funny, I had this conversation with Clint, the guy who runs Outlaw Outdoors. We had dinner with him Saturday night. And I asked Clint, I said, because he's a hard spot guy too, I said, are most of your hard spots on the upriver side of the humps, points, and ridges you fish? And he said, a lot of them are. Now, all of them aren't, but a lot of them are. The reason for that is, over the last 50 plus years of current, it's come down through there. Some days very little current, some days a lot of current. And it's washing that silt and that sand off of that red clay. So what you wind up with is hard spots, okay? Now, the really good ones have pot marks. I believe, and these guys do too, have pot marks in them. So basically, they almost look like brim beds or potholes is really what they look like. You'll know them when you're around them because your sinker gets hung up in them a lot. And it feels like rock. A lot of what feels like rock out there to you is red clay. If you don't know what that feels like, it's real easy to find out. Go down, put it in Umphreys. All those points around Umphreys down there are red clay points. Get up in 5 feet of water where you can see the bottom and see what you're fishing. Throw a ½ ounce tungsten weight up there and drag it across that. You'll then know what a hard spot feels like. So it's concrete, it's shell bed, it's rock. Most of them in Rayburn are clay. I'm sure there's a couple of other things, but that's the vast majority of them, and that's what you're looking for. I posted something today on the fishing forum. If you haven't seen it yet, it's in the comments about video 2, and I'm actually showing you on your Helix Hummingbird units. You can actually find hard spots by mapping an area, putting it on your computer, and on your bottom hardness, it'll light them up. You can drop a waypoint on them. I'll try to get a video up on that later this fall. I don't know how to take those screenshots and put them on video, but I'll try to figure it out. But there's a nice little piece on there about it, and you can find 100 hard spots in 2 hours versus dragging a bait around out there and taking forever to find them. Let's go to video. I apologize, this is the first video where we get some wind. There is some bad audio in this video. My fault, I'm sorry. I moved up, but bear with me. The bad audio is only about a minute and a half right in the middle of this video, and then it gets better again the way the wind lays down. And I'm going to close caption anything that you can't hear so you'll be able to know what these guys are talking about or as we go through this. So video 3, keep the feedback coming, keep the questions coming. And Albert and I started to say Clayton. Hi, Clayton. Albert and Glenn will answer them for us, and we'll keep posting them up here, guys. Thanks for watching.
That's what we're out here for. We got questions. TXTT tournament. What was your weight first day?
I don't know, a little over 40 pounds.
Just 40 pounds. How many fish was that?
5.
But you really struggled the second day, right?
Yeah, we didn't have the 20-something.
So one of my guys asked, tell us about that day. And so here's the questions I want to know. First off, how many fish do you think you caught the day you caught the 40 pounds?
Probably around 20, 25.
Okay. And how many times do you think you culled?
We culled 7 or 8 times, but it was you know, most of the time, a couple of culls was just little small culls, you know, where you actually just about had to balance beam the fish to figure out which way to cull. And then you'd catch a good fish and, you know, obviously which one you're going to cull in. But once we got all of our good quality, we did cull 1 5-pounder.
How long did y'all fish? Actually try to catch big ones?
Mid-morning.
Okay. So those spots y'all caught those fish off of?
Yeah.
More than one spot?
Yeah.
And did you know going into that tournament that this was going to be a huge stringer?
No.
Okay.
No. We was hoping to get in the mid-20s a day. You know, and I had, of course, we've got spots that, you know, we know and we fished for years that we got confidence in, and it's just a matter of timing. We hit some of them just right. You pull up, you catch a fish or two, and we don't spend a lot of time on these spots. But we'd pull up, we'd catch a fish or two, and if we caught a big one, we'd stay a little longer. If we didn't catch another big one pretty quick, we'd move.
What's pretty quick?
Next 10 or 15 casts.
Okay. So your thoughts there are, if there's a big one up there, they're going to bite it.
Most of the time, you'll get them pretty quick.
And I don't know if y'all have noticed, but he dropped the crankbait and he's picked up a jig. He doesn't just, you're not dragging it, you're moving it.
Yeah, I don't. I will. You know, there's lots of times I'll just drag it slow, but majority of my hits, especially with these deep fish, they catch that bait when it's falling back to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I'm not really stroking it, but I'm kind of in between a drag and a stroke. You know, just keeping it going.
So the spots y'all caught those fish off of, these are not spots you found in the weeks leading up to this tournament.
No, this is stuff that over the number of years, you know, I mean 40 plus years, you know, you get confidence in spots at certain times of the year, and you say, okay, I've caught them here multiple times, and you go back and start running those kind of spots, and it's not something you learn in a day or two or a month or two. You know, it'll take you years to figure out stuff like that.
All right, so having said that, you whacked a stringer on Grand last spring.
Right.
What'd you have, 23 pounds on Grand?
Something like that.
And you found those fish that day?
I found them that day.
And they were offshore?
Yeah, well, they was point fished. I mean, they were.
So maybe that helps us understand better, since most of our guys aren't going to be able to come down here and spend a couple of years. Tell me about those fish and what you were thinking. And I remember the story, but tell me what happened.
Well, I had been fishing shallow. I've been fishing in a marina area trying to find spawning fish. And I couldn't find anything of any size. And I was going to go run another marina because I knew there were some fish on some beds. And I got started out of that marina, and there's this point over here that had a lot of rock and stuff around on it. And I'm thinking, man, I ought to fish that point. And I'm gonna go on and do this, but that wasn't in my plan, and I'm idling out there, and I don't remember what happened. I had to get a drink or eat something or go to the bathroom or something. I don't remember. I stopped, and my little gut told me again, so you need to go fish that point. So once I got cranked back up, I told my co-angler, I said, well, we're gonna go over here and hit this point. I said, I've got to, because it's just that feeling is too strong. You know, my gut's telling me go fish that point. And I pulled up there, I was throwing an 8-inch lizard. First cast, I catch one of them 5-pounders. And I said, well, you know, that's pretty good. So, I don't know, it's probably 7 or 8 casts later, I caught another 5-pounder. And I made my mind up then I was going to pretty well fish that area for a while. So we fished it, caught 3 or 4 more fish on it, and it was probably 20 minutes into it when I caught that third, about a 5-pounder. And so I stayed with it, you know, for another 15 or 20 minutes without catching anything. We left and started running some more stuff like that. Went into another little area that I knew that had a point, because I figured at that time those were staging fish. You know, I said, well, I'm fixing to start just looking for staging fish.
So do you remember, were those fish coming in or going out?
They were coming in.
So they were still full of eggs?
They were pretty small.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I went and started running some more areas similar to that, and I had thought about a place that I found when I was up there before pre-fishing. Man, it just sets up right. It's a little small pocket, but it's got a good little rocky, man-made little rock dike that comes out, and on the back side of it there's a bush with a log laying out beside it, and that hits me, and I said, man, I got to go do that. So I go in there and I get lined up on that log, throw in there, first cast, catch 4-pounder. You know, it was just one of those things. I remembered that from when I was there pre-fishing before, and just, you know, clicked from that one little deal, you know, started running.
All real instinctual, just from doing it, and yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of it you get is just, you know, it's that gut feeling, and I still struggle with it once in a while, even after all this time. I get my mind, I'm kind of hard-headed. I get my mind set on wanting to do something, and my gut starts telling me to do something else, and I go against it, and that's the wrong thing to do.
So I think you just referenced the lovely time we had last year in the Coastal Championship at Kentucky Lake.
Yeah.
Brutal.
It was.
So I don't know if y'all just, so a couple things real quick. You pulled up on this spot, and you've got an Ultrex.
Yeah.
But you dropped a buoy.
Right.
Why?
Because I wanted to mark the area that I wanted to fish. You know, that gives me a reference point to where that drop off is, and I can I've got something visual to look at.
Okay.
I don't always put it there, but when I'm pre-fishing an area that I don't know real well, I'm gonna put me something out there to look at. Just
You use a buoy still?
Depends on how many people are around. If I'm out there by myself, like right here, we're pretty, no boats close to us and everything. Yeah, buoy really helps you. But more times than not, if there's people within seeing distance, I basically line up something on the bank to give me my reference point, and then watch my electronics.
So, do you fish many brush piles on Toledo?
No,
How come?
I'd rather find them on their natural
natural stuff.
habitat. In other words, these are places that they come to no matter what. Brush piles you have good days and bad days, and believe me, brush piles work, but I just don't. If I find fish on a spot, and I'm not looking for a brushy spot, I'm looking for a lot of times clear spots where they like to pull up and feed. You drop a brush pile, you change a fish. Sometimes they won't come back. So I like it natural. That's what I look for.
So you think a brush pile will absolutely screw up a spot?
Some spots, yeah.
Can you expand on that, or you think it's just random that some spots it helps and some spots it makes worse?
Well, it's just like if you come home today and in your living room something's missing or something's added, you're going to know it
Scare the hell out of them.
right off the bat. That's right. It's different. You either like it or you don't like it.
Yeah.
And these fish have been coming to some of these natural spots for years, generations. These are the spots you need to find. So many times I found a spot and someone go out there and drop brush piles on it, and it's not any good anymore. It's gone. They're gone. Sometimes it aids it, but more, I just rather find natural places.
You know, Newberry said something. You just said something that reminded me. He said something this spring that I thought was really interesting. You know, it got so cold down here this spring, and he said, actually to the cameraman in the boat with us, he said, this generation of fish have never seen water this cold. And I thought about it. When a fish only lives, 4 to 7 or 8 years, the fish you're fishing for, it's generational.
That's right, exactly.
So interesting. All right, so we're going to look for something else, and I'm going to film as we look here, guys. I know we got motor noise, so we didn't get bit there. There's where we started, right?
Right.
What we're going to look for now?
We're just going to graft these. I got a little steeper contour right here. I'm going to check it. I'm going to graft this drain in here. And these points, I'm just going to graft. I don't graft just a point. I don't graft just the drains. I try to do a little bit of all of it, because time of the day, current, no current, whether it's bright or cloudy, sometimes they'll be out on the end of this point, sometimes they're going to be in one of them drains. And not knowing the spot, you don't know the little sweet spot there, so you got to try to find anything you can that gives you some kind of confidence that maybe you can catch fish there. And there's a lot of bait out here. For some reason, we just didn't catch any fish back there, but I know there's got to be a few fish scattered around here somewhere. There's too much bait.
So those of you who can't see, Albert's got a 12 in the dash and a 12 on the side there. He's running his map and his 2D here And over here, he's running his side scan in his 2D. Do you like the grayscale better?
On this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know how to change it.
Beautiful. What are you looking for?
I'm looking for color changes, hardness of the bottom, bait, you know, some kind of bigger spots, a piece of brush. It's just something a little different from everything else that's around it. And sometimes you grab fish that you see and can catch, sometimes you don't. Most of the time I don't.
Say that again. Most of the time you don't see the fish you catch, you don't think?
Correct.
Do you think you see bait mainly?
See bait, I'll see a contour hardness change.
How do you see a hardness change?
Your colors change on your depth finder here to me, and like on your side scan, well, that doesn't work. I'll show you here in just a minute. We'll go across something. You see the color of this bottom here is kind of a yellowish, and then it fades. It's kind of wide, fades into the brown. It's firm, but it's not real hard. And we'll get up. I'm gonna kind of work my way up on top here and see if it changes.
It's an old cemetery.
Right around on the side of this point right here. It's an old cemetery in this area here. So there's going to be some parking lot area, a road, something down there that's hard, and there was probably a big old cedar tree or two out there or something, you know.
Shade tree.
You know, I know they dug all these graves up and moved and coffins, but it left holes in some of these cemeteries. You can still see depressions from the holes.
Wow.
That's not all of them, but there's a lot of fish right there of some kind, and there's a little brush. So we're gonna stop, make a few casts. Let me get a marker buoy so I can get this marked. There's some brush or something right there too. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good drop off. That's kind of like what Glenn was saying a while ago. I like to find the stuff the fish won't be on natural. I mean, that's, to me, it's the consistent stuff that you can go back time and time again and catch fish on. And to find that is, you know, like kind of finding a needle in a haystack. And see, you can see out to our right out here. We got some. We got a little brush or something scattered out there. I don't know what it is. I haven't been straight over the top of it yet, but there's a little something there, and there's a lot of bait around here. See if we can catch it for.
That's right. Year. We're in July, fixing to go into August and everything. These fish have been fished hard ever since the first of the year. And now's the time when, even though they're offshore, they're in deeper water and everything, but they still have been just hammered all year. They've seen baits all year, from the time they went up to spawn to coming out, pre-spawn, post-spawn, everything, during spawn, and now the deep water. And they're just more spooky right now. Sometimes if you catch one or two out of a little group of fish and everything, then they're gone or they quit biting. But a lot of it's the time of the year. They've just been hammered for so long now. And this happens every year around, you know, August and July and everything. They just get a lot more spooky.
So when you guide and you pull up on a deep spot, do you ever put them in the live well because of that?
No, I don't. And you know, we tried that one time, and I'm not sure it made any difference. Like I say, it's just the time of the year and everything. And normally right now I don't put them in the live well.
Yeah, too stressful on them.
Yeah, we just immediately let them go immediately.
Yeah.
You know, let them survive for another day.
Come to find out, you might need to catch them again.
That's right. They need to grow up a little bit bigger to catch them again.
So I'm curious, not a question anybody asked. How often do you think you catch the same fish over?
Not very often, most of the time. I don't.
Glenn?
I agree. I agree. I mean, I have seen it occasionally and everything, especially if you break off your bait in the fish and the next cast, you may catch that fish with your bait in his mouth. I've done that, but it don't happen all the time.
You know, I caught a fish on Table Rock one day. I had just missed a fish on a fluke, and I caught a fish, and my fluke was sticking out of his throat.
Yeah, right. You do occasionally. If you've got a frenzy going on right at that time, and you hook one, you break him off or something, yeah, a lot of times that fish is still in that frenzy. He don't realize what just went on, but you go like today to a spot and you catch a fish, or you catch 10 or 15 fish out of one spot, say. You come back tomorrow, you might catch one or two of those fish again, but chances are those fish, they done been kind of harassed and messed up, they move on somewhere else a lot of times, I think.
Do you think you catch them, if you catch a fish Friday, can you catch him Saturday in the tournament?
Most of the time, not.
I agree.
Not in general.
I agree.
If you've got a fish that's living on something specific, you know, I mean, if you've got a fish that's on a bed, which naturally, you know,
Yeah.
people know you can catch them a lot of times again, but if you've got a fish that's living on a certain stump or a certain tree or something other, you might have a chance to catch that one again, but most of the time I do not even think that I'm gonna catch that fish.
So one of the questions, and you guys answered it when we were idling, but it's hard to hear the audio when we're idling. The key to y'all both, you know, we're talking Rayburn right now, on these deeper spots, is a hard bottom. Yes?
A lot of times, yes.
Right.
Same on Toledo?
Same thing.
And how do you know when you're hitting a hard bottom?
You can see it on your electronics, first of all, and you can tell by how that bait reacts to the bottom also. It's got that sharp, crisp feel. I mean, just like Albert was saying, especially with tungsten weight, you can tell immediately if it's got a hard bottom or not.
Tungsten weight and fluorocarbon lines made a little difference, hadn't it?
Yes, it has.
It has.
And high dollar rods.
Well, good quality rods. They don't necessarily have to be high dollar to be good quality.
That's right. Yeah.
Got our Kistler shirts and our Lou shirts
Yeah,
on here.
that's right.
And like this spot here, I mean, it's not a real hard bottom. It's not real mushy, but it's not, and I haven't felt anything, even with that crankbait a while ago, I didn't feel any of those little spots that I was coming through that felt like it was good hard clay bottom.
But when you're fishing these deep spots and you're fish, and suddenly you feel that harder bottom, and I always equate it to, a lot of times you'll kind of get hung up in it because it's got a lot of this stuff down here's clay, right? And it's got those little tiny potholes in it.
Right.
And when you start getting hung up, that's the spot, at least I think, I want to focus on. Agree?
I agree. Every piece of structure, like a ridge or hump or point or whatever you got out here, it's got a sweet spot on it. It's got a little sweet spot, and that's what you're looking for. And most of the time, it's around a hard bottom.
Do you think, I think Albert, I know the answer to this one with Albert, do you think the angle of the cast makes a difference on some of those spots?
Sometimes. I have seen it, instead of sitting in the deep part, the top of the hump, let's say, right next to the top of the hump and worked it up. That ain't very slow and everything. So I have seen that. A lot of that's wind direction too. How it's got the bait moving around, how the fish are positioned. You know, according to generation and everything, they position themselves different during generation, during winds, because the bait actually reacts different. So that's the thing, it's what the bait does.
And you know, in reference to what I was talking about when you and I was having that discussion, you know, with the angles, is a lot of times, say like, you're fishing the side of a drop off and there's one big stump there. And you come across that stump one way, and your bait hops it towards other fish. If you don't get the angle right, like this particular situation, if you don't get the angle right, where the fish actually are sitting on that stump, then you can fish it for 30 minutes from one way. You don't get a bite, you're going to get a different angle. I'm sure you're coming like between two stumps and still on this top of it, just missing the fish.
Who's running the trolling motor up there?
It's running itself. Where at one certain angle, you just are not going to get your bait to where those fish are sitting in. You know, and it's not a lot of spots that's that way, but there are the areas that if you don't take the time to figure, if you find a really good piece of structure, there's probably some angle that you can catch fish on that structure.
So you said something, and I know a little something about your history here. Albert, how many of your really good spots up the lake did you find because the water was low and you saw them?
Several. When the water was down, you know, 12, 14 foot lower, whatever it was, I spent a lot of time riding around looking and seeing where the bottom change was at and where the hard spots were and little spots that had shell. There's a lot more shell in this lake than people think.
Yeah.
Those little places like that is a lot of stuff that I wish I'd have made a lot better notes.
Really?
Because there's a lot more of that stuff out there that I just can't pinpoint because you don't have anything for reference.
Because and we're not telling anybody anything about the spot, but one of your spots is absolutely a do-nothing spot, right? And it's just something you saw a little a foot change in depth where there shouldn't have been one, basically.
Well, yeah, and it's hard.
It's a hard spot.
I mean, there's not a lot of depth change to it, but you got just like this flat, and you've got just a little bit of change there, but you've got one area that's about the size of 2 boats that's hard. And it's
how many fish over 4 pounds have you caught there in the last 5 years?